Hi, I'm Bernie Hayes. Today we'll be talking about history and preserving history with J Medlock today on The Bernie Hayes Show. And welcome back. History. J Medlock, you represent who? What do you represent?
I represent the State Historical Society of Missouri, St. Louis Research Center. We're one of 6 research centers in the state with headquarters in Columbia. We also have other research centers in Rolla, Kansas City, Springfield, and Cape Girardeau. Okay,
so people don't be confused. You're not the Missouri Historical Society. You're the state archivist, more or less.
It's Missouri Historical Society is more St. Louis focused, and also they have a much larger museum component. They're off of Lindell near Forest Park.
Right.
The State Historical Society has a more statewide focus. That's the biggest difference, although we still do collect manuscripts and photographs and papers and records of organizations and individuals.
What's an archivist?
Well, basically, the simplest way I could put it is that my job is to basically seek out, collect, arrange and describe, and make available materials of enduring value. And that can be anywhere from the papers of immigrant communities, or the papers of politicians, or the records of religious organizations or social service organizations. Things of that nature. That's the simplest way I can describe.
Okay, and these are displayed in the different cities that you mentioned?
Well, each research center has a collecting area. So in St. Louis, we focus on St. Louis City, County, St. Charles County, Jefferson County, Pike, and Lincoln. We don't necessarily display them. My job is to, as I mentioned, arrange and describe them, put them in acid-free folders and boxes for preservation quality folders and boxes.
And digitize.
Sometimes, and sometimes digitize. It's and basically make them available. The finding aid, which is basically a description of the collection available online, and then researchers can come in and look at the materials. Now, some things we do put online, and some things we do put on display, but most of the time they remain secure in our storage areas.
Mr. Medlock, name some of the artifacts that you have, some of the things that you archived.
Well, the collections. One of our most well-known collections is the Dismas House records.
Oh, wow, okay.
So
tell the people what Dismas House was, for those who don't know.
Well, for all individuals who don't know, Dismas House was. They were one of the first organizations in the country that was a halfway house for recent released convicts to get them out and reintegrate them into the community. It was started by, I think, Reverend Charles Clark.
Yeah.
And they actually made a movie into it. For any of you who are movie buffs, it was made into a movie called The Hoodlum Priest, starring Don Murray. So that is one of our most significant collections. It's about 6 cubic feet and contains anywhere from correspondence, photographs, and documents the general history of Dismas House. And then, as I was mentioning, we mentioned earlier together, we have the DeVerne and Callaway papers and Ernest Callaway papers. They were big activists, civil rights activists in the St. Louis area. Right. DeVerne Callaway was a state representative, so that's another one of our bigger collections.
Yeah, both of them have history, Ernest was a labor organizer, and DeVerne is one of the very first black state representatives here from the St. Louis area. So what's the importance of keeping these records?
Well, the State Historical Society of Missouri, we want to preserve the history, obviously the history of Missouri. It's complex history and its people. And I think it's a way to remember where we came from and to see where we're going. And so it's always good to, I think, to have these records to look back and try to preserve the past that way.
And those who are interested in some of the records that you have, can they view them online, or do they have to visit your site, or what?
Some are online. With digitization, it can be, there's so much to digitize. It is physically impossible to digitize everything.
Sure.
So some can be, but not all of our collections are online. It's most people have to go to the research centers to actually look at the collections we have.
You've been collecting things from 1898. I imagine over the state you have here in Cape Girardeau, Springfield, Kansas City, Raleigh, and Columbia. So tell us some of the other artifacts and displays that you have, exhibits.
Well, in terms
around the country.
Well, in terms of collection, collection-wise,
Yeah, sure.
so the Columbia Research Center has the Warren Hearns
Okay.
papers. He was the former governor of Missouri from
Yes.
1965, 1972.
Right.
Let's see, we have the Christopher Bond papers. That's another big
U.S. Senator. Yeah.
Yeah, U.S. Senator. So those are just some of the collections we have. We have a lot of, I think we have the Kansas City has the TWA records, or portions of those records. Yeah, that's a really...
Yeah, they're a hub here in St. Louis.
Yeah, then that's one of their biggest collections in Kansas City. I know Kansas City also has a lot of architectural collections. I think, and so do we as well, some architectural... Leo Graff is one of our architectural collections here. So there's a pretty wide variety of collections in the state that the society has collected over the years.
How did AJ become interested?
How did I become interested in archives?
Yeah.
Well, I had a lot of good mentors. I came into it just wanting to be a history professor back when I first was a freshman year in college. And I spent a lot of time in the archives, as you have to, obviously as you do, to write research papers. And the archivist at my undergrad, Paul Huffman, asked me. He said, "Hey, do you like this?" I said, "Yes, I like researching." And then they started explaining me what archives entailed. And from there, I kind of fell in love and thought this is what I want to do, making collections available to people for research and preserving history. And so from there, I interned at the Missouri State Archives under Mike Everman, and then I went to a series of master's degrees and got my master's degree in library science. And luckily, I got hired by the State Historical Society of Missouri, and I am so very lucky to be working for them.
Tell us the schools you attended.
Lindenwood University in St. Charles.
Okay.
I also did a public history degree at Southeast Missouri State University in Cape Girardeau. And then finally, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where I got my library science degree.
Wow.
And yeah, it's quite an adventure and a lot of schooling. I was frankly glad to be finally done with school and able to get out in the field and start working.
So the State Historical Society of Missouri, it itself, what would you say is the main mission of the organization?
Well, I first need probably it's okay if I go a little bit in the history of how we got to. We were formed in 1898 by the Missouri Press Association, and it still exists. It was a group of newspaper publishers and editors, and the original mission was to preserve Missouri's newspapers, because at that time they were worried that we were going to start losing all these historic newspapers. It's a good record, a good first account of the history of the state. And a year later, we became a trustee of the state of Missouri. And since then, our mission has expanded. And as I mentioned before, I think the most succinct way that I've ever heard of what we do is from Gary Kramer, who's our director, who mentioned who basically said that we exist to document the complex history of the state of Missouri and its people in all aspects. And I think that's the most succinct explanation that I can that I can.
Well, it's pretty succinct.
Yeah.
Tell us how can they reach you and get more information and even view some of the artifacts.
Well, I think in order to view our manuscripts, our finding aids, basically go to shsmo.org.
Okay, say just a little bit slower so we can put it there. Sorry.
shsmo.org. And on that website, you can find our research guides, our finding aids for the collections at the 6 research centers through the state of Missouri, upcoming events. We have, right now, Columbia is having its grand opening. And the Columbia Research Center has a new building, and so it's having its grand opening in August. So we're all very excited about that. And you can also see about getting copies of the journal, Missouri Historical Review. That's our publication through the State Historical Society of Missouri. It basically publishes research articles that scholars have used from our collections. And so you can see all those types of things. Then you find the contact information for all of our research centers. So if you have a question, we are open to the public. We're open to scholars, genealogists, students. If you just have an interest in history, you can always send us an email if you have if you or want to look at a collection or just a general research question. We're always wanting to help and be a part of the community and help people if they're
This is great. Okay, J Medlock is my guest, and we're here at the New Life Evangelistic Center. We're at 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri. The 1411 Locust Street location has been closed for some time, but they're trying to get it reopened. And but the same services that were provided down there are provided here. As you know, Reverend Larry Ryson, he's been 47 years providing services for those in need. But we receive no state funds, no federal funds, no United Way funds. Everything that the program is funded through are through donations and gifts from you. And you may help us through Post Office Box 473, St. Louis, Missouri, 63166, or online at www.newlifeevangelisticcenter.org. American Express, Visa, MasterCard, Discover Card. Takes less than a minute to give a donation, a gift, or an investment in the New Life Evangelistic Center. Back with A.J. Medlock after this.
An epidemic of homelessness is sweeping throughout the United States of America. In city after city, people are ending up on the streets. Now, instead of feeling overwhelmed, as believers, we can do three things. We can give, we can volunteer, and we can pray. We can pray for the homeless refugees that we're finding in one city after another, all over the United States. So many people ending up out on the streets, and the hearts of so many are growing cold at this particular time and indifferent to the need. Jesus said, as oft as you've done it to the least of these, he said, even so you've done it unto me. When's the last time you've prayed for the homeless refugees in the United States of America, appearing in city after city, not only in major cities, but even smaller cities? So many people ending up out on the streets, even in resort areas, places you never think you'd find homeless people, they're there. Jesus said, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but he, the Son of Man, had nowhere to lay his head. Please pray for the refugees. Please pray for the homeless people in America. And pray for those that are on the front lines, the first responders, reaching out through Jesus Christ among the homeless and hurting, whether it's in Springfield or St. Louis. Your prayers and gifts to the New Life Evangelistic Center makes a big difference. This New Life Evangelistic Center, P.O. Box 473, St. Louis, Missouri, is 63166.
Hear this, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land. Let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream. You trample on the poor and force him to give you grain. Therefore, though you have built stone mansions, you will not live in them. Though you have planted lush vineyards, you will not drink their wine. For I know how many are your offenses and how great your sins. You oppress the righteous and take bribes, and you deprive the poor of justice in the courts.
Welcome back. A.J. Medlock is my guest. He's the archivist for the State Historical Society of Missouri. And I keep saying that because oftentimes people think it's the Missouri Historical Society, but it's not. It's the State Historical Society of Missouri, although you are located here in St. Louis, one office here.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
At the UMSL campus at Thomas Jefferson Library.
Okay, that's easy. Most people know about that. Thomas Jefferson Library on UMSL campus or University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Yes, sir.
We talked about the Dismas House, but also the Metropolitan Church Federation records you have, and the St. Louis branch of Clergy and Laity Concern. These institutions have advocated on behalf of the poor and powerless of St. Louis area. So tell us about each one of them. Then I want to ask you about why you're interested in New Life.
Well, like I said, Dismas House we've talked about that already. It's one of the first halfway houses for recently released prisoners. Mm-hmm. The Missouri Metropolitan Church Federation, they were also in a similar vein to New Life in the sense that it advocates on behalf of the poor and really try to do Christian action, trying to reach out to the community. Mm-hmm. And as I was looking through these collections, I am trying to find maybe potentially new collections to bring in. Because it's part of my job is to go out and find new collections I think may be interested researchers. I thought, well, New Life Evangelistic Center is basically done the same kind of work in a different way.
Sure.
But I thought that it's been such a huge part of the community for 40 years that it would be a shame if that history was somehow lost or just wasn't available to researchers in the future. And so I thought, I would try to contact Larry Rice Reverend Larry Rice and see if he'd be interested. And I believe, I talked to him earlier, and he seems that he's on board. These types of things take time, though.
Yeah.
But I was really interested in just in preserving that period of St. Louis history that I think maybe a lot of people know about Larry Rice, but I don't know if they know about the work that goes in behind New Life Evangelistic Center, and I wanted to preserve that history because I just would hate to see that any part of history be lost.
Certainly. And I also understand that you were an advocate and also a viewer of New Life for a long, long time.
Well, when I was a child, as an archivist, I have to be.
Sure.
As an archivist, I am neutral. We collect all sorts of records and papers from individuals.
Yeah, certainly.
Most of my experience as in New Life was essentially as a child, watching cartoons, and then Larry Rice would come on, and he would do a little talk. That's the most of my experience.
Sure.
But it was kind of interesting that my life has taken me on this journey where now, years later, as an archivist, I get to meet the gentleman who I used to watch on TV as a 6 or 7 year old and ask him if he wanted to donate his records to New Life's records to the State Historical Society. So that's it's interesting how things turn out.
It is beautiful, isn't it? AJ, have you ran into any papers or records that have been destroyed that kind of broke your heart?
Not so far, not in my career that I've ever, thankfully yet, that I've thought, oh man, if I've not called anyone yet who said they've lost, that they no longer have their records or they're just gone. So I'm lucky in that sense.
Sure.
I'm sure it'll come at some point where I'll probably shed a tear. I'm sure it'll happen somewhere in my career. But I've gotten lucky in that sense that personally I have not come across anyone where I asked, would you like to donate your materials to us, and then come to find out either they decided to throw it away or just lost. So not yet.
Yeah,
So,
okay, well, that's a good thing. Now, the offices that you have in Columbia, where are they? Cape Girardeau, Springfield, Kansas City, Rolla, and Columbia. Do they do mostly regional collections in their...
In their areas, yeah. So just like St. Louis, we have a certain regional area, like in certain counties. It's the same with Columbia. They're more central Missouri. Same, and then the Cape Girardeau Research Center, that's in the southeast corridor of the state. Rolla is kind of near Columbia. It's kind of that area too. Kansas City is eastern Missouri. Springfield is southwest Missouri. So that's how we divvy up the collecting areas in the organization.
What personal satisfaction do you get out of this?
I think just I know it sounds cliche, just preserving history, getting to know about all these people, and then helping our researchers out too. That's why I had finding collections that a researcher didn't know we have or had, and then seeing the look on their face when they realize that, oh my God, this is a treasure trove, and they thank me, and just seeing them just go in and look at the records and the papers. I think that's one of the that's the best part of this job.
In the collection from the New Life Evangelistic Center that you eventually will maintain, was there anything that struck you, other than Reverend Larry Rice being here for 47 years, was any particular portion or development at New Life? Was it care for the homeless? Was it feeding the poor? Was it advocating for those who are in need?
Well, what struck me is, like, as I mentioned, that this is one of our collecting areas. But yes, I think it's an aspect of St. Louis history that can get overlooked, is the care for the poor, and also I think what makes Larry Rice kind of interesting is he, over the years, has done some innovative things. I think at one point he was breeding catfish in the pool of Locust Street, and just those kind of. I think that mostly the innovation that he's done with his work, and then of course, just the care for the poor, and And then I think that's probably the most interesting part of the history that I would like to preserve.
Would the renewable energy faction of it be interesting to you?
That will. Right, most of those would be digital. Like those records would be born digital, meaning they're created solely on computer. At the moment, we're still trying to figure out tools and resources to adequately preserve digital records, or digital papers, as we also call them. And they're much more fragile than actual paper. So we're still trying to figure out a good digital preservation infrastructure to preserve those kinds of records. But yes, that would definitely be an interesting part of the records, because the environment is also something, a subject area that we're interested in. Like we have the papers of Kay Dry and Leo Dry as well, and they were big. Well, I mean, Kay Dry is still a big.
She's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, anti-nuclear power activist. And I've met her before, and is a very wonderful, wonderful woman.
Yeah, Leo passed away, but Kay is still with us. Thank God.
I'm.
You know. You may see the Bernie Hayes mug here on this table. You may also see the Harris State University mug and the Webster University mug. But this is very dear to me. And Reverend Larry Rice would like for you to have one, along with his latest book, Due to Fire. And instead of me trying to tell you how to get one, why don't we call on Reverend Larry Rice to tell you how to get a mug?
Hello, I'm Larry Rice, Director of the New Life Evangelistic Center. I want to encourage you to get your Bernie Hayes mug. And in addition to sharing a very special gift of $25 or more so we can get back into 1411 Locust, I have a historical book that I want to add to the mug to enable you to get the complete history of what took place between 2012 and 2018 to shut down a church at 1411 Locust because its congregation were primarily homeless people. We're going to share both of these with you if you'll share your gift now so we can get back into the 1411 Locust building and help the hundreds and hundreds of people that are suffering at this time, that literally have nowhere to go. I thank God for Bernie Hayes and his faithful years of service, for his program that has touched the lives of so many people. And now we're teaming up with Bernie Hayes, sharing the Bernie Hayes mug and Through the Fire book, if you'll just share that gift of $25 or more. Now be sure you request the Bernie Hayes mug and the Through the Fire book, and you know that you'll be a part of great things God is doing.
52 years ago, a crowd of onlookers saw a 21-year-old African-American man and his mother being arrested by the California Highway Patrol, thus precipitating the Watts riots and eventually Black Lives Matter. A patrolman struck a man named Fry on the head with a baton, knocking him unconscious, and the gathering crowd saw police brutality. The police sealed off most of South Central Los Angeles. It took some 3,900 National Guardsmen to quell the 6 days of unrest. The riot claimed 34 deaths and more than 1,000 injuries. Millions of property damage was sustained, and it went on. While much has changed since the Watts riot, surprising, there is a sobering distinction between the traffic stop in 1965 and current-day cases in the news, such as Walter Scott in North Carolina, Michael Brown here in Ferguson, Missouri, and Eric Garner in Staten Island, New York. That's what we mean about Black Lives Matter, and that's our history lesson for today.
Now you can take NLEC TV anywhere as you put the NLEC TV app on your iPhone or mobile device. NLEC TV is an innovative TV station that's on the cutting edge of community service. On NLEC TV, you'll discover wholesome family, community, renewable energy, and inspirational programming. Those needing energy assistance, food, clothing, or freedom from the cycle of homelessness will find that plus much more on NLEC TV. Now, you can receive NLEC TV by going to 24.2 on your television set or putting the NLEC TV app on your iPhone or mobile device. For further information, call 314-436-2424 or go to nlecstl.org. That's nlecstl.org.
Welcome back. My guest is J Medlock, and he's the archivist for the State Historical Society of Missouri. So many things we've talked about, and so many things that you're creating locally at the society. But what if you had a wish list, knowing the St. Louis area, being educated here in this area, Is there anything other than New Life acquisitions that perhaps you might want? What's the wish list for you?
Wow, that's I have a list at work of the types of collections that I would like to. I think maybe like Bill McClellan, very famous St. Louis area columnist.
Sure.
Gosh, that would be. I mean, to be able to get in contact with him and get his, because also journalism is another big aspect of our. Yeah. And so we have the. So we have a couple journalism collections. So yeah, I think Bill McClellan would be an interesting one. That'd be one of the top ones.
You may get him to wear a tie. Bill never wears a tie. Archaeologists, what part do they play in your research?
I don't have much to do with archaeology in terms. The only other aspect that I have any kind of I mean, like I said, we're mostly focused on preserving collections like manuscripts, digital records, stuff, materials like that. As I mentioned, we do have a museum component. Do you remember Marlon Perkins?
Oh, certainly.
Well, we have his papers, and we have an exhibit up at the Thomas Jefferson Library on level 2. My colleague Miles Jenks just did the exhibit, and it is wonderful. So if anyone's interested in learning more about Marlon Perkins, I think the museum, our small exhibit component would be of interest to people who are interested in that, and Marlon Perkins and Wild Kingdom, his TV show.
Yeah, they still play some of his clips, in his Mutual of Omaha show.
Yeah, that's...
Marlon Perkins was a very distinguished person. How many people have you met that impressed you in your job?
That impressed me?
Yeah, I mean, name people that we perhaps might know.
Well, I think I don't want to say impressed. I'm always really happy to meet anybody who's. I'm always, I think the great parts of my job is meeting all sorts of people. So it's hard to say who impressed me the most.
Sure.
I think we mentioned Kay Dry.
Yeah.
That was one of the really good experience meeting her, since she was such a very advocate for open housing and she was anti-nuclear power, which I found to be an interesting subject. So I think getting to meet her was kind of it was kind of like, wow, I can't believe I'm meeting Kay Dry, and then like I said, and also meeting Larry Rice. Never thought that would happen, and so I have a very fortunate job in terms of meeting these people who have made a mark on St. Louis history, and of course being interviewed by yourself. That's
you're very kind. So what's the futures for A.J. Medlock?
Continue working at the St. Louis Research Center. I love it. I get up every day looking forward to going to work, just trying to get out there and make our name known, and also probably trying to get in more collections to make available to researchers and the public.
How can we reach you?
Well, the easiest way is going through shsmo.org.
shsmo.org.
Yes, sir. Okay. And if you can go to the St. Louis tab, you can, if you want a general research question, you can contact us at stlouis@shsmo.org. If you want to contact me directly, or if you think you have records or papers that you may be interested in donating, my email is medlocka@shsmo.org.
That's wonderful. A.J. Medlock, I just want to say thank you so much for being a guest with us today. Thank you for your interest in the New Life Evangelistic Center, and thank you for your interest in history, and thank you for preserving what you do.
Thank you for interviewing me and getting this opportunity.
Wonderful, great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for viewing us too. And don't forget, we're at 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri, 63114. Still want you to come by, visit the New Life Evangelistic Center. See the many components of the business here. See the many things that Larry Rice and his staff are doing. I think you'll be impressed. I'm Bernie Hayes. Have a great day. See you next time.